We've got breaking news out of college football where Auburn is hiring Hugh Freeze as its next head coach. That is confirmed by our Dennis Dodd. Freeze has spent the last 4 years at Liberty, leading the Flames to bowl eligibility each season. Prior to that, he was the head coach of Ole Miss from 2012 to 2016. Freeze resigned after 5 seasons with the Rebels amid under pressure for violating the school's morals clause in his contract. So that takes another one of the openings off the board with Auburn hiring Hugh Freeze. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell. Dennis Dodd also joining us. Dennis, I'll come to you first here. You just received confirmation that this is a done deal.
Yeah, it's a done deal. Don't know terms yet, but Hugh Freeze as a plan B after Lane is quite a get for Auburn. I think he's paid his price, paid the penance for the wrongdoing, both in his personal life and obviously the NCAA issues at Ole Miss. That seems so long ago now. He could always coach. He's beaten Nick Saban twice while he was at Ole Miss. He's enmeshed with the SEC culture. He knows how to recruit. And Ole Miss, I don't think, will miss a beat. Lane got them to their first regular season with 10 wins. He got them to, 18 or 19 wins. That's the second most in a 2-year period. I think it just keeps chugging along with Hugh Freeze because he is grateful to have this chance back. There was a time not too long ago, maybe even a few months ago, where it looked like, Hugh Freeze may never get this chance again, but he's going to get it.
Yeah, you mentioned it too. It feels like it was the next best thing outside of Lane Kiffin, which I always thought was a long shot anyway. I mean, Lane Kiffin has built something at Ole Miss. Why would you risk losing that to go take on the highly volatile job that's Auburn? And meanwhile, you've got Hugh Freeze, who's been desperate, as you mentioned, really wanted to get back to the SEC at the top level of coaching. And now he's got an opportunity to do it again in the same division where he had success before. But I think probably more importantly is now some of the things that he got in trouble for at Ole Miss, you're allowed to do now. So I think you see somebody who has connections, who knows the recruiting landscape as well as anybody there in the Southeastern Conference. I would expect him to go have some success sooner rather than later. Offensive-minded coach who has done a tremendous amount, whether it was at Ole Miss or at Liberty too, where this season, once again, I know they came limp into the finish, and you do wonder if some of the meetings that he had to take or interviews he had to take might have detracted from the end of this season. But the last few years at Liberty, he's built a consistent winner and put a quarterback in the NFL in Malik Willis just a year ago that is playing for the Titans somewhat. So he's an offensive-minded coach. I think it fits a lot of what Auburn was looking for, and it'll be one that will reinvigorate a fan base which has been desperate for a winner, and they'll be able to raise more money to put it towards a collective to, once they pay Hugh Freeze salary, now they can go out and put the money together to build a roster that can compete with anybody.
Look, he's a good football coach. He's won where he's been. As Arkansas State for a year, won there. He won at Ole Miss. Now, granted, there are some extracurriculars that were going on too. Obviously, clearly, that's part of the baggage that comes along with making this decision for Auburn. But he's a good coach. He won at Liberty. And is also good as an underdog. I mean, you've seen time and time again Liberty knocking off top 25 opponents or Power 5 opponents. And he was able to do that during his time at Ole Miss as well. So this hire to me has a lot to do with the fact that they wanted to find a coach that made sense, that fit what they're looking for from a recruiting standpoint, but also that could compete with Bama. I mean, that's what this is really about. If you're Auburn, knowing that you've got the Iron Bowl every single year, and that really, to go through the SEC, it really goes through Bama. Maybe you make the case for Georgia too, to some degree. But in the SEC West, it's Bama. And that's what this is about, bringing a coach that you feel like gives you a shot versus Alabama when it's all said and done.
Back-to-back losing seasons for the first time since 1998-99. Dennis, I want to come to you on social media. There's been some pushback from some of the fans, a reaction not necessarily as positive as perhaps Auburn would like. What do you make of that reaction, and are you surprised by that?
I think half of it is disappointment that they didn't get Lane Kiffin. But look, that's a separate situation in itself. It looked like he was going to go. I think Ole Miss thought they had a deal in place. And for whatever reason, Lane stepped away and stayed at Ole Miss. He has a daughter that's at Ole Miss. I think he's very comfortable at Ole Miss, even though the restrictions there as far as state law say he can only have a 4-year contract. He's being well compensated. And he was going to be well compensated whether he went to Ole Miss or Auburn. So that was a push. So his reasons for staying are his own. We'll have to respect them. That's fine. But I don't think Hugh Freeze is much of a step back, if anything, what you guys just talked about, an accomplished head coach, a recruiter in the SEC. And look, if we can elect people to office who have done much, much worse than what he's accused of doing, then certainly we can welcome Hugh Freeze back, who has owned it, by the way. He's not denying it. He's owned this stuff, reconciled with his wife over those off-the-field issues. So I respect him more for that.
Third different head coach in 4 seasons for Auburn. So how much pressure is there on Auburn to get this right? We know this is Plan B, but, I mean, they got a deal done. They're getting a guy that they want. How much pressure is on them to make sure that they got it right?
Yeah, there's always a ton of pressure, but I think they need to be patient. I mean, that's something that it's unfortunate that, now that we've got the transfer portal and we've seen its impact on rosters, being able to turn things around in short order, that sometimes isn't sustaining. That's not creating a foundation to a program and really building your culture. I mean, we saw what happened in Michigan State after a Cinderella season a year ago. Then you look at this year, they weren't able to follow that up. And it was in large part due to when Mel Tucker got there, he really turned over that roster between recruits and what he was doing in the transfer portal. So you got to be careful sometimes about that and having that quick success or being that flash in the pan, not being able to sustain it. So to me, this is all about patience too with Auburn and trying to build this thing up to be what I think they think it's capable of being.
And you don't want to lose your credibility as a contender in the SEC, which I do think Auburn has lost some of the credibility with the cycle of coaches you've been through. And we saw that at Tennessee for the past 20 years as they were searching for the next Philip Fulmer. Now, maybe they found him in Josh Heupel, but that wasn't even their top choice. And they had to go through a lot of growing pains to get there. But I do feel like if you're Auburn, you want this one to hit. You want this one to resonate so that you're not right back in this position, having to write another check to another coach not to coach your program, and you're right back out there trying to find your dream hire. So I do think there's pressure, yes, on Hugh Freeze, but also the administration and the school itself to get a true contender that can actually go out there and compete with the likes of Bama, LSU. And I think it's interesting, too, because fan bases think there's always that coach that's going to fix it right away. And we got some great examples of schools that have done that. Lincoln Riley turned around USC, and we had Brian Kelly at LSU bring back LSU to an SEC title game. But we also have instances of Mario Cristobal at Miami and other schools around the country where they made that change, and it's a process. So that, to me, is what's going to be interesting. How quickly does this thing turn around? And if it takes a while, is the Auburn fan base willing to be patient?
Well, look, what time is it? Is there pressure? Yeah, 24/7, 365 at Auburn, because Auburn is Auburn because of the culture in the state. They're going against Nick Saban in Alabama every single minute, day, second of the year. So, yeah, there's pressure. But I think that's why they're in this situation where they're willing to pay top dollar. But I think Hugh Freeze comes along at the right time. And I hate to be callous about this, but off the field in college football these days, you need an NIL war chest. Auburn is very public about assembling that. You need to be active in the portal. And you need to assemble the best darn roster you can. It's all legal right now. And until further notice, that's the way the game is being played. If you're half in like a Stanford or a program like that, then you're just being left behind. Auburn is all in. They've got the resources. They were the number one job in this cycle. They got the best coach they could. And everybody's aware of the pressure. There's nothing there. New AD, that's why John Cohen was brought in. There was some question as to whether he would accept Hugh Freeze having been at Mississippi State. And Mississippi State was intimately involved in turning in Ole Miss back in the day when Hugh Freeze was there, but it's all good. And now I think this just makes the West tougher. Brian Kelly, we could do a half hour on Brian Kelly, what he's done at LSU. Now Auburn's going to be back in some level, challenging Alabama. And all this is predicated on these guys who are signing contracts on Nick Saban, retiring in the next 5 years, if that's going to happen at all. But you can see the end from here, and it's going to be these type of coaches who are going to carry on.
Senior college football writer Dennis Dodd, Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell discussing the hiring of Hugh Freeze by Auburn here on CBS Sports HQ. Thank you very much for your time, Dennis, and gentlemen, for joining. Freeze, by the way, 19-21 in the SEC with Ole Miss between 2012 and 2016. But he did take the team to number 3 in the AP poll, 2014 and 2015. Let's take a look at the coaching carousel. You can scratch Auburn off the list. Hugh Freeze, confirmed, hired. Our Dennis Dodd.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.